This story is from a man's perspective. Okay, this is the only story I know about the man-child known as BowlerBeard. 18, politics student who, being the classy gentleman type, substituted the libertarian fedora for the bowler hat of a true English gentleman. Frankly, the story is worth it just to describe this guy instead of the edgy atheist and Rand wannabe we see so much on the sub. BowlerBeard was a traditional English conservative in the most unbearable of fashions. His patrician edginess came from his deep-seated love for the monarchy, the Anglican religion, and the strong guiding hand of Parliament. I'm pretty sure the guy straight up worshipped Nigel Farage. Given that he studied in what is probably the most bohemian, artsy, and liberal student towns on our fair isle, this made him, in his eyes, an edgy, out-there radical, and he made sure everyone knew it. As a true English gentleman, he obviously presented himself as such, wearing the most gentlemanly of attire, a bowler hat he probably paid way too much for on Amazon, and worst, almost everywhere. He complimented in true English fashion with a graphic t-shirt, baggy jeans, running shoes, and frequently sporting possibly the fluffiest neckbeard I have ever seen. Now, the guy was not as outwardly socially inept as most neckbeards are, and at least did not stink out a room. I knew him originally from the Tabletop Gaming Society, which was about 50% neckbeards and 50% really cool people. And though I only saw him with one friend, a guy with the most severe case of incel chin I have ever seen, he even managed to score himself a girlfriend. The third character in our story, who I'll just call R, 23, was an Erasmus student from the Netherlands, like a one-year study abroad thing in the EU, who later dropped out of her original school to study at ours. She was very sweet and actually quite pretty, but was stuck with a kinda unflattering Rotterdam accent that made her a little shy, and a name that mostly unpronounceable for us English folks, and even a mouthful even for Dutch people. Because of this, she went by a nickname that, even more unfortunately in English, sounds like a word that is a synonym for very smelly. So yeah, she was a little insecure about it, but mostly dealt with it like a champ. I knew her from a few different places, including tabletop, but not especially well, and had a bit of a thing for her, but I decided not to pursue it because I did not think she would be interested in someone that was much younger than her. I'm a year older than BowlerBeard, but lo and behold, at some point, much to my bemusement, she and BB started dating. Now, this lasted a surprising amount of time, though the reason why makes more sense later, and me and R actually became fairly good friends towards the time when BB's neckbeardiness really began to shine. He and R went to visit her parents in the Netherlands. Now, pretty much anyone who knew R knew that she was a very family-oriented person who absolutely adored her nieces and nephews, and their visit coincided with the birth of her third nibbling, who had a difficult birth and was in a very poor health, leaving everyone, R included, very fragile. This is where his fuck-up comes. Upon meeting the baby with R, someone asks if the parents had a name in mind, to which they responded, Wessel. Now, I'll admit it's a sort of funny sounding name in English, but to BowlerBeard, this was hilarious. He broke out in laughter and would not stop until sharply elbowed. Now, this is a mistake that a normal person could make, sure, but any normal person would realize that bursting out in laughter at the name of a potentially fatally ill baby in front of its parents, right next to your girlfriend, who you know is a very attached to her family and has been excited telling her everyone about the impending birth of her nephew, and more of a bit self-conscious about her own name, accent, sounds in English, as a massive, colossal fuck-up of intensely awkward proportions. BowlerBeard did not. Cue a lot of fights, and they quite rightly broke up. At this point, me and R had become fairly close, and I was one of the first to learn of BowlerBeard's fuckery. After the rather slow and agonizing breakup, BowlerBeard somehow managed to convince himself that he was a victim of R, and that she had wronged him by refusing to give him the closure he so clearly deserved, as he hounded her incessantly for constant discussions about their relationship. Fast forward a week or so, and both R and BB are at their one mutual social event, tabletop. As was tradition, every session started with a game of werewolves, basically the game Mafia if you do not know it. All that matters is that everyone has to sit in a big circle and one person leads the game from the center, for some reason or another. The person running it could not do it, and left R in charge of running the game. R does her job with BB and Incel Chin in the game. Until at some point, she hears people snickering behind her, very obviously making fun of her accent. And knowing who it was, she spins around, kindly asking them if they can shut the fuck up. Lo and behold, it's BowlerBeard, laughing and pointing at her behind her back like a true English gentleman. Upon being spotted, his face turns from amusement to doing his best attempt at looking dignified yet hurt. He then gets up, throwing his chair behind him in what I'm sure he thought was a display of masculine energy, and storms out of the room. R, a tad shocked, goes back to running the game, but is interrupted by it a few moments later by BowlerBeard bursting back into the room like a true English gentleman and shrieking, and yes, I mean shrieking, in front of a room about 30 to 35 people. "Why can't you just say you're sorry?" Sorry for what? I honestly have no idea. He got banned from tabletop. After I went with R to pick up the remainder of our stuff from his house, we barely heard from him again, mostly because the university bros threatened to take disciplinary action if he kept harassing her. Shortly after, me and R got together for a little while before breaking up for a number of reasons, except, unlike poor BowlerBeard, we stayed pretty good friends until drifting apart when we left uni. After we broke up, I started to get a picture as to why they stayed together for so long. R came out as asexual shortly before we broke up, and from what I gleaned, they never actually had sex, since BB was a devout Protestant and did not believe in sex until marriage. From the way she talked about him, R did not seem to be physically attracted to him at all, not even aesthetically. I think she mostly just valued having a relationship that was not based on sex, which in the end is kind of a mark in baby's favor. I never saw or heard from him again until he followed my housemate, R's best friend, who was very much on her side in the breakup, all the way home from the bus, bowler hat and all, and insisted on talking to her awkwardly in our garden for a solid half hour. It became obvious after that he was trying to prize my housemate away from R, very unsuccessfully so, though I'm sure there are more. These are the only BowlerBeard stories I know, onlooker as I am, and while he does not fit the usual neckbeard stereotype, his childish ignorance of his own awkwardness and his bowler hat make him a real gem in my eyes. I hope you enjoyed my little story. I wrote whilst a bit drunk. I'm going to pray neither of them ever read it. Edited for clarity.